This is Part 3 Episode 70. Even so, Hikaitu did not relax. Another white cannon shell blew up in mid-air, from which a round protective shield with a diameter of 3 meters appeared. This was another Class 7 protective soul barrier that was released in the form of a cannon shell, allowing it to be placed at any corner of the battleground. It was a special soul tool Hikaitu could also use for his own defense. With a boom, the two cannon shells split apart. However, while they were powerful, they could not compare to the golden dragon spear. The bolt of lightning pierced through the layers of fire as it hit the round protective shield. White ripples appeared on the round protective shield. After it was deployed, this shield could exist in mid-air for as long as 30 seconds. While it was not a stationary soul tool, it was still one of the top Class 7 soul tools in existence, called the Protective Angel Cannon Shield. If it was used well, its role in saving one's teammates during a battle was remarkable. However, the Protective Angel Cannon Shield was breaking apart now. The golden dragon spear stopped, and the shape of a golden dragon flashed on top of the spear. The dragon's roar became louder and louder. Following that, it pierced through the Protective Angel Cannon Shield. The golden dragon spear did not slow down as it continued on its path toward Hikaitu at an even faster speed. What shocked everyone was the fact that Wang Chua suddenly stopped. She seemed to be mumbling to herself, as if she were praying to the heavens. Hikaitu, however, sighed in relief. While the golden dragon spear was powerful, he could feel, at that moment, that its deadliness was gone. The golden dragon spear no longer exerted any pressure on him. The protective angel cannon and his two high explosive rounds had diminished much of its power. As he noticed that the golden ray of lightning was almost in front of him, Hikaitu changed too. A pair of hammers appeared in his hands. It was even Hui Yuhao's first time seeing Hikaitu using a close combat soul tool. However, he had to admit that these hammers fit Hikaitu well. The hammers were only about 50 centimeters long, but their heads were more than half of the length, their entire bodies crackling with electricity. They were the thunderous war hammers, Class 6 soul tools. Wang Chua, who was in the distance, had disappeared. A goddess of war, wielding the golden dragon spear, had appeared before Hikaitu. Her golden dragon spear can teleport her. Hui Yuhao watched with his mouth agape. He could not help but think about how Wang Chua had appeared before him and helped him with his 3-in-1 martial soul fusion skill. With such limited time, Hikaitu could not react in any other way. He lifted his two war hammers as he tried to clamp onto Wang Chua's spear. Boom! Instantly, Hikaitu felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. While he was confident in his own abilities and was a soul emperor, he was still far from Wang Chua in terms of raw strength. Everyone who was watching the fight could clearly see Hikaitu's knees buckle and sink down. His entire body appeared to be absorbed by the ground, as the electricity from his thunderous war hammers turned golden. Hikaitu felt that his arms no longer belonged to him. Wang Chua used the rebound of her strike to leap back into the air. As she was about to land, she turned around in mid-air and her spear reached out, pointing itself straight at Hikaitu's throat. Resist! Hikaitu could not even lift his arms, much less resist. His joints were immobilized by the massive force that had crashed down on them. How could he resist? The spear's tip stopped, just an inch away from his throat. Hikaitu opened his eyes wide in shock. He could feel that there was a force at the tip of the spear that was absorbing his soul. It was an ominous feeling that told him that he was only inches away from death. Wang Chua wins. Yang Xiaojia's voice stopped everything. From Shrek's side, Xiao Xiao was already running at full speed. Bei Bei looked at his team and tapped Hui Yuhao lightly on the shoulder and said, "Go, Yuhao." "Why me, elder brother?" Hui Yuhao looked at Bei Bei with an innocent face. Bei Bei said naturally, "You understand her best. Furthermore, when you asked us to help you take care of Ji Juechen, did we reject you? Go, it's time to let them see how powerful you've become. You can do it." Hui Yuhao looked at his compatriots, as if he was imploring them to do something. However, they all pretended that they did not see him, even Wang Donga. Helplessly and unwillingly, Hui Yuhao walked out. He did not want to face Wang Chua, not just because of how powerful she was, but also because of the weird relationship the two of them had. He did not know how he should face her. For the other members of Shrek's 7 monsters, the only ones who stood a chance against Wang Chua were Bei Bei and Shusansha. While Wang Donga was also a soul emperor, she had already fought, and Hikaitu had lost. Jiang Nan Nan and Xiao Xiao, both of whom had yet to reach 6 rings, were obviously weaker than Wang Chua. This was why Bei Bei sent Hu Yuhao out. When Wang Chua noticed that it was Hu Yuhao who walked out, her expression changed. Then, she flicked her wrist and pulled her golden dragon spear out of the ground, pointing its tip right at Hu Yuhao. From afar, Elder Xian and Cai Maya nodded. Hu Yuhao versus Wang Chua. This was a fight worth watching. Yang Xiaozhe looked at the two of them, and a smile crept across his face. He said, "Remember, don't actually draw blood. Start." The moment he said that, Wang Chua started to move. Like before, her left leg stomped down forcefully on the ground, leaving a deep crevice. Her body was already barreling straight toward Hu Yuhao. When he saw the hole she left behind, Yang Xiaozhe's heart ached. "We need money to repair the grounds again. With the power of this girl, what materials must we use to prevent her from leaving any more holes?" Hu Yuhao had no desire to pit his speed against Wang Chua's. With her powerful force, Wang Chua's short-term explosiveness allowed her speed to exceed that of a seven-ringed soul sage. As he watched Wang Chua, cloaked in gold, hurtling toward him, Hu Yuhao's gaze turned sharp. An orange-golden silhouette appeared behind him, and the adorable snow lady appeared once again. She twiddled her index fingers habitually as she looked innocently at Wang Chua, who was rushing toward her at high speed. Hu Yuhao did not retreat. An intense layer of gold light shone from his body, and his eyes suddenly turned bright. Can it be? Does he want to meet her head-on? Everyone exclaimed in their hearts. They could not help but admire Hu Yuhao's bravery. At this time, the soul rings on Hu Yuhao's body started to shine. A white halo expanded. It was enfeeblement. As a control-type soul master, it was impossible for him to clash head-on with her without first attempting to weaken her. After enfeeblement, he used spiritual confusion on Wang Chua. As a spiritual-type attack, you could not block it even if you knew what it was. Wang Chua's head snapped back due to the spiritual shock. Just as she was about to resume control over her body, she lost it once more as she fell to the ground. At this moment, Hu Yuhao moved. Like her, he pushed off with his left leg. While he was not as intense as Wang Chua, the explosiveness of his speed was comparable to hers. This was because he still had 4 soul thrusters behind him. His entire body shone with bright, golden light. Hu Yuhao was already flying toward Wang Chua at lightning speed. He punched out with his right fist and sent her flying. Timing and soul skill control. Hu Yuhao did all this perfectly. Everyone couldn't help but fear for Wang Chua. With Hu Yuhao's control-type abilities, he was at an absolute advantage. However, just as everyone thought Hu Yuhao had won with his punch, Wang Chua, who had been sent flying down, suddenly turned her body in midair. She faced Hu Yuhao, and her left fist went flying toward him. Her body was suspended in a slanted position in midair. Of course, she did not break free from gravity. What supported her body was the golden dragon spear in her right hand. It turned out that Wang Chua was able to break free from the spiritual shock. Then, she quickly steadied her body as she punched Hu Yuhao back. When Hu Yuhao attacked, he had never expected himself to win immediately. If he could do that, Wang Chua would not be Wang Chua. However, he was shocked at how quickly she was able to free herself from his spiritual shock. This girl's spiritual resistance was strong indeed. She stood at her original spot, unmoving. She did not even try to find Hu Yuhao. Wielding her golden dragon spear, she appeared extremely calm. She closed her eyes as she sensed the changes around her. A rather thin layer of golden light appeared from her body and enveloped her within it. However, this seemingly thin layer of light was able to block the snowflakes that came at her like little knives. Standing in the center of the snowy dance of ultimate ice, Wang Chua's soul power was being massively depleted as well. No matter how powerful she was, in the face of this domain, Hu Yuhao was able to combine his power with that of nature to attack her. The snowy dance of ultimate ice worked better in colder and wetter places. While Shrek Academy was not particularly cold, the presence of Sea God's Lake nearby ensured a sufficient amount of environmental humidity. Hu Yuhao released his snowy dance of ultimate ice not just to deplete his opponent's strength. It was also because he knew he could not go against Wang Chua head-on. They had been through thick and thin together, and he didn't even want to fight her from the start. The other reason was that he was searching for an opportunity as well. In the domain, Wang Chua would be severely affected. This was equivalent to sealing her golden dragon's perception, while Hu Yuhao could sense her changes at any time. Hu Yuhao just needed Wang Chua to slip up by a bit, and he would have a chance at defeating her. Hence, he waited. Even if he did not do that, and he lost to Wang Chua, she would be unable to fight another round, because the snowy dance of ultimate ice would have depleted her soul power. As a control-type soul master, Hu Yuhao's technique in this regard was considered exceptional. Wang Chua appeared to have fallen into Hu Yuhao's trap. She stood there, unmoving. Her entire body was like a statue, and her golden dragon spear touched the surface of the ground silently without a single movement. Under this condition, Wang Chua appeared to be full of weaknesses. However, the more she appeared as such, the more Hu Yuhao dared not touch her. Wang Donga was not anxious, as she could understand what Hu Yuhao was thinking. He wanted to wear her down. However, she was still uncomfortable with the fact that Hu Yuhao was not fighting Wang Chua directly. What kind of place did she have in his heart? Time-wise, Hu Yuhao had released his domain for quite some time. If he continued in this way, he may not be able to sustain it for long. Wang Donga understood Hu Yuhao best. Just when she made this prediction, Hu Yuhao, who was hidden in the snowy dance of ultimate ice, started to move. Like a snowflake, Hu Yuhao gradually approached Wang Chua. In this domain, he was the master. Naturally, all signs of him would be covered by the domain. Hu Yuhao reached out with his palms. At this moment, they took on different colors. His left hand was icy blue, and his right hand was icy white. Lightly, they came down on Wang Chua's back. His soul power could not sustain the domain for long. Defeat and victory lay in this move. If he won, that would be ideal. If he lost, he would have depleted her soul power, and that was still good. When he saw Wang Chua before him, Hu Yuhao paused momentarily. However, he was about to place his left hand on her back. He could see that his left hand had been completely covered by crystalline diamonds, which gave off a dark, mysterious blue light. However, at this moment, Wang Chua moved. The golden dragon spear was gone. Wang Chua's golden dragon spear had disappeared from her right hand. Her dazzling spear light had disappeared too. Oh no! I've been tricked. Hu Yuhao instantly deduced that something was wrong. However, at this moment, his wealth of experience in battling came into play too. Had it been anyone else, they would have tried to create distance the moment they realized they had been tricked. However, Hu Yuhao understood that it was no longer possible for him to do so. He had personally witnessed Wang Chua's speed and strength in close combat. Even with the cover of his domain, he could not run away. If he lost his momentum, he might not even be able to parry her next blow. One must realize that much of his soul power had been depleted. Hu Yuhao did so much, but Wang Chua just did a very simple action. From the moment she acted, her entire action was one smooth movement. She stabbed out with the golden dragon spear in her right hand, and then she let go of immediately. The moment Hu Yuhao tapped her waist, her body froze momentarily. Then, she prepared to punch out. While resisting the domain, Wang Chua released her first soul skill, Golden Dragon Body, to ensure Hu Yuhao took the bait. When she was hit, she did not reinforce her body. Only by doing this could she truly confuse Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection. Hu Yuhao's Ice Empress wrath even felt a little stifled from that formidable draconic force, as if it was repressed within his body, and he had no way of releasing it. The fist hadn't even reached him, but he already felt as if his body were about to break apart from that immense pressure. This was absolutely a matter of life and death. Hu Yuhao's eyes began to sparkle underneath all that pressure. His abilities were typically increasingly more explosive and ferocious when he was facing great pressure. Not even Wang Chua expected Hu Yuhao to respond in this manner in a circumstance like this. She couldn't even evade his attack. It simply wasn't possible. She dodged Hu Yuhao's right palm when she twisted her body and punched out, but an immense gravitational power emerged from the center of Hu Yuhao's fist at this moment. His right arm trembled at the same time, and his shoulder dislocated just like that, making his arm a few inches longer. Hu Yuhao wanted to rely on that minute difference to strike Wang Chua before she could hit him. He had never expected Wang Chua to erupt in that fashion, and that instance of explosive anger made Hu Yuhao feel as if his life was in danger. It was instinctive for him to give everything he had under such circumstances, and he never thought that he would accidentally touch Wang Chua's heart with his snowless glacier. This was a bitter misunderstanding. The snowless glacier was extremely powerful once it took effect on Hu Yuhao's target. If Hu Yuhao hadn't saved her, Wang Chua would have been done for. He had had no choice but to save her, and he couldn't waste a single second. So, he had saved her, but the deed brought great trouble upon himself. But what other choice did he have? Wang Qiu's flying kick made Hu Yuhao feel so aggrieved, and the real reason why he fainted was because of what she had shouted. There was almost no way for him to remedy this misunderstanding. How am I going to explain this to Donga? Hu Yuhao stared at the vast spiritual sea before him with a bitter look on his face. He really didn't know what to say. Do I have to tell Wang Donga the truth, that I touched Wang Qiu somewhere I really shouldn't have? In that case, wouldn't Donga be infuriated? However, how else do I explain it if I don't tell her the truth? What outrageous acts have you committed now, you rascal? Why do you look so despondent? A lazy voice suddenly rang out from all directions at that moment. Hu Yuhao's melancholic frown immediately froze when he heard this voice. In the next moment, an indescribable elation erupted from his eyes. Brother Skydream, Brother Skydream. Where are you? He leapt to his feet, and controlled his consciousness to form a body as he flew into the space above his spiritual sea. He didn't care about anything else, as he shouted as loudly as he could. Yes. That lazy voice belonged to the Skydream Iceworm. Skydream and Iceworm and the Ice Empress had been hibernating ever since the Snow Empress entered the state of polarity that day, sending Hu Yuhao's spiritual sea into turmoil, and forcing Electrolux to burn his own divine sense to save the others. A long time had passed since then, and he hadn't heard anything from either of them. He. I'm still alive. Why are you crying? Skydream's voice was tinged with deep emotions. Specks of golden light gradually rose up from Hu Yuhao's spiritual sea immediately afterwards, and combined to form Skydream's frame once more. However, the golden halo around his body had completely vanished. Hu Yuhao only realized that the face that he had conjured with his consciousness was flowing with tears when Skydream mentioned it. Hu Yuhao flew up before the Skydream Iceworm in a flash, and opened his arms wide before hugging the pudgy body while he leaned forcefully against the immense, but soft frame. Brother Skydream, Teacher Electrolux has. Hu Yuhao began to bawl when he thought about all the unfortunate things that had happened. Skydream heaved a faint sigh and said, I know. Electrolux is truly a human that deserves our respect. Both the Ice Empress and I thought he was going to draw upon our strength to complete that ritual back then, but who could expect that he actually immolated himself in the end? He was the one that saved us all. Skydream Iceworm also began to lament and sigh with despair and regret at this point. Hu Yuhao sobbed for quite a long while before he recovered. He raised his head and said, How have you been, Brother Skydream? You should be fine by now. The halo around your body. A human face appeared on Skydream's head, and he made a human-like expression of exasperation. I've fused completely with you. Even though my spiritual origin is still sealed away, it's been completely submerged into your spiritual sea. This body is all that I have left, and this is only a projection of my consciousness. More accurately put, I am only a guest taking up residence in your body at this point, and you can chase me out anytime you want if you wish it. Of course, that also means it's over for me if that happens. Hu Yuhao replied angrily, Can you not make hypothetical speculations? That will never happen. Skydream chuckled and said, It's all right, it's all right. I don't think I'll die even if I leave your spiritual sea now. Electrolux's ritual is truly miraculous, and it's made certain transformations to both the Ice Empress and me transformations. Hu Yuhao stared at him with a confused look. Skydream chided him, Have you grown stupid? Spirits. Are you trying to say that both the Ice Empress and I are not fusing our strengths and our spiritual imprints with you willingly? The truth is that we completed the spirit seal that day too. However, we are different from the Snow Empress in a way that our process was even more successful. The reason is because we fused together a long time ago, and we were already a part of you. Hu Yuhao's eyes widened and his jaw grew slack. Brother Skydream, are you saying that you've also become my spirit? Does that mean you can leave my body to fight? Skydream chortled and said, I'm not very good at fighting, although I can take a stroll outside. I'm not entirely your spirit yet, and I will only become one after a certain degree of conversion. Fortunately, I was smart enough back then to let you absorb imitation. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to release your martial soul when I fully convert into your spirit. A thought crossed Hu Yuhao's mind and he said, Is that because the soul ring you attached to my body will be different from normal situations after you change into a million-year spirit? Skydream nodded and said, I don't have a soul ring for you, as my soul ring has long become part of your body. However, once I change to a spirit, the soul ring will also change to a certain extent. It will be different from the Snow Empress spirit. There's no way for me to tell what it will look like, but you'll find out when it happens. Hui Yuhao said, what else needs to be done before you can change into a spirit? Do you want to become a spirit, Sky Dream? Please don't force yourself if you don't want that. Just like Sky Dream had said before, there was a huge rift between completing the process with the Snow Empress back then and completing the process with Sky Dream at this moment. Hui Yuhao didn't feel any abnormal undulations in his spiritual power or his soul power. The pact was already completed. Sky Dream had officially become Hui Yuhao's spirit from this moment onwards, Hui Yuhao's second spirit. Whoosh! Sky Dream's body flashed and disappeared within Hui Yuhao's spiritual seed just like that. Hui Yuhao's consciousness returned to his physical body, and he subconsciously opened his eyes. It was already completely dark outside. Wang Donga was gone, and Hui Yuhao was the only person left in the room. The chair that Wang Donga had sat on while she was watching over him was still beside his bed. Wang Donga had left when the sky turned dark. Hui Yuhao had still been asleep, but his vitals had returned to normal, and everything seemed fine. Wang Donga didn't know how to face him when he woke up, so she chose to run away from this problem. From her perspective, everything might be different when she woke up the next morning, or everyone would just forget about what had happened before. Perhaps Hui Yuhao would give her a reasonable explanation. Despondence and grief was exhausting, and Wang Donga had fallen into a deep sleep once she returned to her room, Brother Sky Dream. Hui Yuhao swiftly sat up on his bed and called out softly, "He, you can't find me, you can't find me." Sky Dream's voice rang out in Hui Yuhao's mind. Hui Yuhao chortled and said, "Have you forgotten the spiritual detection you gave me?" He activated spiritual detection at once and surveyed the entire room. "You're cheating." Sky Dream's exasperated and unconvinced voice could be heard once more. Hui Yuhao finally found him using spiritual detection. Sky Dream was on his body, but hidden in the folds of his clothes. He lifted Sky Dream from the folds of his clothes. Hui Yuhao didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw the Sky Dream iceworm's appearance. "I understand," Hui Yuhao suddenly exclaimed, his eyes as wide as ever while he stared at the Sky Dream iceworm. His eyes were filled with incredulity. Sky Dream was almost undergoing a reincarnation, and that meant that the life origin imprint that he had integrated into Hui Yuhao's body all those years ago was being extracted to fuse with Sky Dream's shed skin and form a brand new Sky Dream iceworm. Sky Dream was making himself a brand new body, and would be able to survive independently even if he didn't return to Hui Yuhao's body. He could even survive easily in a place far away from Hui Yuhao. How is this possible? "You're creating life, Brother Sky Dream," Hui Yuhao exclaimed with wide eyes and a slack jaw. The skin finally minimized completely and fused seamlessly with Sky Dream. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.